It's extremely rare to find some footage of what goes on behind the scenes at Studio Ghibli. But luckily, not only do these documentaries capture two master Japanese filmmakers working in their craft, but they filmed them when they were making their final feature film. You know, as excited as I am about this news, there's still that part of me that just looks back at what I just said and I look at this and ask, really? The decade had some of its sad moments, including the passing of one of its founders, Isao Takahata, who gave us his gorgeous finale, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and acclaimed director Hayao Miyazaki announced that after his latest film, he would officially retire from animation. Until 3 years later when he changed his mind and decided to make another animated feature. Again.
Konnichiwa. Welcome back to John the Bell Reviews. Now some of you might be wondering why I began with some Japanese. Well, it's because I'm reviewing something very special. A Japanese animated film. But it's not just any other. It's one by one of the co-founders of Studio Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki, after 10 years, which is The Boy and the Heron, or its original title, How Do You Live in English, but in Japanese, it's Kimitashi wa do Hikuruka. Now, before I get into this, I would like to get a little personal of how I came across Studio Ghibli and other Hayao Miyazaki works. Back in 2012, when I was 11 years old, in my final year in elementary school, I went to the movies and saw Studio Ghibli's release of The Secret World of Arrietty. And during that age, I didn't think much of it, but it wasn't until high school when I came across another one of Studio Ghibli's films, this one by Hayao Miyazaki, titled Howl's Moving Castle, during an English class in the 9th grade. And I've become fascinated with it ever since. Next, during 10th grade in Japanese class, I watched his masterpiece, Spirited Away, but they were mostly on DVD during those classes. But it wasn't until starting in 2018 that I began to watch the big screen re-release of that film during what they call Studio Ghibli Fest. And I thought it was that kind of magic that intrigued me the most. It made me want to watch more of those stuff at the movies again, which made me a big Studio Ghibli fan ever since. Now, as for The Boy and the Heron, as is known to be the return of legendary Hayao Miyazaki after 10 years with his temporary swan song, the 2013 title The Wind Rises, released in Japan during that year, and in 2014 in the US and Canada, which is also my personal favorite film. This was also known to be the first ever to be released in the IMAX format, as well as being the first traditionally anime film to be released in that since Disney's Treasure Planet, which was very fascinating. This will be quite an interesting experience and a godsend after Studio Ghibli's failed attempt at computer animation with Earwig and the Witch, done by the infamous Goro Miyazaki, was also known for the critically panned Tales from Earthsea, and this will most likely be their equivalent of Disney's Chicken Little. So anyways, was Miyazaki's big screen return worth it? Well, let me tell you all about it. From the story, loosely based on the novel written in 1937, this is a story about a teenage boy evacuated during World War II, or the Pacific War in Japan, in order to find a better life for his future. And along the way, a heron who's mostly by a lake, who would irritate him at first, helps him guide the way to what it's like during his visit there. What I admire about this film is the heavy themes this film tackles with, which is about grief and loss, which is something to cope with during real life. From the way it's presented, it reminds me of The Iron Giant, where those messages are carried on by Hogarth Hughes and the giant himself. Only this time in this relationship, instead of robots, it's birds, which is a recurring theme in The Boy and the Heron. Another thing that I like is the fantasy element, which occurred during the alternative world. It's like bringing a full-length version of Jiro Horikoshi's dream sequences together, like in The Wind Rises. Only this time, instead of airplanes, there's birds in it. It was really fascinating to see this world, which is very similar to like Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke, except it isn't a world of like a variety of spirits in some sort of huge locale where they inhabited, but it's really amazing to get into. With these recurring symbolisms and themes presented in this powerful film, it's quite immersive, as you would expect from a Hayao Miyazaki film, which I love. Now for the animation, what can I say about Studio Ghibli's top quality animation? Well, for one thing, it's quite refreshing to see more traditionally hand-drawn work appear on the big screen again, even if it's made in Japan, since during that time I've been reviewing mostly anime films done in computer-generated imagery. This is quite a breath of fresh air and take my mind from all that stuff. Anyway, the animation with the humans is just as smooth and realistic as it can get for the most part, and it's still perfect. As for the painterly backgrounds, boy are they beautiful to look at. Even in a forest or a garden like filled with colorful plants, or even a cottage by a sea of boats flying sand by, it's really beautiful to look at and a wonderful feast for the eyes. Also, the creatures that inhabit it, there are these like white bubble spirits that inhabit around a boat covered in plant life. That reminds me of Princess Mononoke with those white tiny forest spirits, and they look cute to look at. As for the variety of birds, there's like giant ones like white pelicans and the colorful parakeets. They are really giant, even beyond the human level. While it's refreshing to have more traditional anime films on the big screen, it's also great to see more of that classic traditional Ghibli style animation return, especially when it comes from Hayao Miyazaki himself. Now the characters, boy, are they just as well written as you would like to get from a Studio Ghibli film, even more than the mainstream. Starting with Mahito, he's the teenager traumatized during the war after his mother was killed in a hospital during that time, and has to cope with that loss while dealing with other struggles like outside, like school bullies, which it's really hard to face through and make you feel for that character. Alongside is the Grey Heron, who is like a bird version of No Face from Spirited Away. Like, he would irritate him at first in his regular bird form, but when he is come out like with humans with big nose, he is willing to like help find his way to get through the struggles he's faced through. As for Hime, like, well, she may be the, spoiler alert, love interest of Mahito. There's something more to her than just that, which you'll have to find out in the film as you go see it. She's also willing to help Mahito guide him through the alternative world. There are other side characters who may not appear much but also aid him along the way. Like Shoichi is Mahito's father who is willing to do anything to help his son get through the struggles he faced through. Natsuko, who became ill during pregnancy, is willing to also explain the heavy stuff as well as the countryside he visits, along with her elderly maids who provide some nice comedy for most part. Also, in the alternative world, there is Kiriko, who resides on the plant-covered boat and is willing to provide Mahito with whatever he needs. And there's also a granduncle, who's like the last encounter the protagonist faces, and he's just as much more helpful as he is others. Also, for the sake of this review, I watched the English dub when watching the movie. While it does have Studio Ghibli English dub veterans like Christian Bale of Howl's Moving Castle, Willem Dafoe in Tales from Earthsea, and the legendary American voice actor Mark Hamill of Nazca and the Valley of the Wind and Castle in the Sky. There's also newcomers like Twilight, Robert Pattinson, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Florence Pugh, and thought their voice acting was excellent as well, as they make the characters more alive and real. This is what I might say about the characters. They're being well written, they're highly relatable, and are willing to help Mahito get through the struggles and stress he goes through. So the big question I have to ask, was Hayao Miyazaki's return worth it? Oh, absolutely. The Boy and the Heron is what I call another one of Hayao Miyazaki's masterpieces, like since The Wind Rises. And I'm just going to straight up say that this is not only the best anime films of this year, of 2023, but also the best anime film of the 2020 decade. With its powerful story, beautiful animation, and genuine characters, and excellent voice acting, this helps make this movie all the more worth it. And I highly recommend it for Studio Ghibli fans, animation films, and film fans in general. So what can I give this rating? Well, a 10 out of 10 for being an amazing movie. There's no question about it. And I think it can also be up there with Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away. Well, join me next time, and I'll be reviewing one of the last theatrically released anime films, Illumination's Migration. And isn't it a coincidence that I'll be reviewing another anime film revolving around birds? So, stay tuned. And Miyazaki-san, arigato for this work of art, and welcome back to the realm of animation and cinema. See you guys later.